Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. I am Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum.
Hey brother, how's it going? So today, this is a much anticipated Movie Mates podcast, dude. So I'm just gonna pass over to my friend here, and he's gonna explain what movies we're gonna be talking about today. Because strangely enough, we have sort of covered this genre before, but it was quite a while ago in the
Yes.
channel. So yeah, over to you, mate.
Well, I mean, after months of eager anticipation, the movie mates will finally complete their Terminator saga. We have
Yes.
previously covered Terminator 1, Terminator 2, Rise of the Machines, and Terminator Dark Fate. So we're finally bridging the gap,
Yeah.
finishing the franchise with Terminator Salvation and Terminator Genisys.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know we titled the first Terminator episode "Good Terminator Film," so
Oh,
but
you titled it that? Like I don't know why there was such aggression in that title.
yeah. Yeah, so I'll title this one "Bad Terminator Films," even though
Sure.
I do quite like one of them.
You put the bad in like
Yeah,
quotation marks.
yeah, yeah.
But Matthew, like, can I ask you a quick question? You know, in the
Yeah,
last podcast,
yeah.
there was a moment that like I just remember. I have no memory of the context, but I just have a memory of screaming at you, "Don't fucking at me!" And I don't know where that came up in a Pixar episode.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think. I remember that line as well. I can't remember where that was from. Don't fucking at me. Where was that from? What movie were we talking about?
I couldn't tell you,
I don't
but
know.
was there much edited out of the last podcast?
Last podcast. What was edited out? I'm trying to think. Did
Because
one of
there was
us?
a lot of screaming and aggression on my part. Again, for a Pixar episode.
There. I don't know. There might have been a bit where I maybe like shortened like some of the talk on our childhood heroes. Maybe I can't remember, but no. There's nothing
Mm.
major. Nothing major, man. But yes, as Callum said, we recorded Pixar Part Three, so that was our last episode 31. So go check that out if you haven't seen it. Thank you for everyone who has supported us recently. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on these films down below. And yeah, full spoiler disclosure, I would imagine as well. And yeah, do you wanna, I'm just gonna pass over to Callum to start off first film then. Yeah.
Well, as I said, I sometimes get quite aggressive on this podcast. But today there's going to be no aggression. It's just going to be deep sadness from
Oh.
the thematic mess that is Terminator Genisys. But first, we'll start with Terminator Salvation.
Let's do it, man. Like, and
Now,
I'm happy to go by your notes.
there is some context to this film, but I think it's best mentioned when we think the context appears in the film, and I'll explain that later. I'm sure
Okay.
you'll understand when I talk about it. But did you have any points prior to talking about just the narrative of the film?
So, did you say we'll leave the context points for later?
We'll leave the one that I know you want to talk about.
Okay. Well, I one question I wanted to ask you was I don't think this movie was necessarily needed because I sort of felt the Judgment Day shown at the end of Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines was perfectly serviceable, and I thought it was a great ending of that sort of segment of the franchise because this movie was sort of out of nowhere. Like I think it was 2009 and stuff, so it was a really weird time for the franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I think even they know that this wasn't needed. It was just clearly a cash grab.
Yeah.
But I do have to admit that like a post Judgment Day Terminator film set in like the post apocalyptic future, like that does sound interesting.
Oh yeah.
It's just that they
Yeah.
made this film a 12, so you can't make a good war film that's a 12.
Yeah.
So it's dog
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah, I know. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong. Did Arnold Schwarzenegger read the script and then decide not to appear in it? Is that true?
I'm not aware of that. Like, I think that they probably just wanted to go in a new direction, and the filmmakers probably just thought he aged out of the part.
How wrong they were. How wrong they were. He's ageless.
If you say so.
But like,
Uh,
go ahead, man.
no, you go.
No, I one thing about this film that doesn't sit right with me is John Connor Christian Bale, and it just doesn't feel like John Connor from Terminator 3. It just doesn't feel like that at all.
No, I mean, okay, like so there have been plenty of interpretations of John Connor. There's been Edward Furlong, Nick Stahl, Christian Bale, and Jason Clarke. I remembered Jason Clarke. Well, those are the four film portrayals. There's been a different one in the Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles. But how would you rank those performances?
Gotta go number one. The God, number one, Edward
They're all
Furlong.
shit, aren't they? They're all
Edward
bad.
Furlong. I like Edward Furlong just because he gets shot in Dark Fate. So that spoilers for Dark Fate. That scene is hilarious. That scene's brilliant.
Yeah.
Edward Furlong is he's okay. He does what he says in the tin. He's Edward Furlong.
Okay.
I suppose Christian Bale is the best one, but that's because he probably is the best actor out of the four, which is annoying.
Sure, Matthew. Let's keep going.
Who's your favorite?
Well, I mean, they're all in the bin. Not gonna lie, like
Yeah.
I hate them all. Not a single one has convinced me that they would be able to lead a resistance against machines. Like they're all either, really weak little bitches, or they just have zero sense of leadership.
Yeah.
So I'd say the best one is probably Nick Stahl. Then then I guess Jason Clarke, but I didn't like Jason Clarke at all. And then Christian Bale, and then Edward Furlong. But they're all shit. Like I hate them all.
Do you think it's a character thing, or do you think it's just the actors they chose?
I don't know. Maybe it's that they spent the entire first Terminator film not showing John Connor, but they talked about his legacy and how big of a badass he is, and then they delivered us Edward Furlong, and I was like, this is embarrassing.
Oh, Eddie Furlong, what a guy! I suppose in this film, Sam Worthington as Marcus, I think he's pretty decent, and Sam Worthington, to my knowledge, he has been criticized a lot for being really bland in a lot of films. And I recently rewatched Avatar yesterday, and I think he's fantastic in that. Personally, I think he's a very talented actor. And Hacksaw Ridge, I think he's good as well. What do you think about him in this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did write that the acting is consistently awful, especially Christian Bale and Sam Worthington. I have to say, there is not one good performance in this film. Like you called like Christian Bale a good actor. If this was the only movie I'd ever seen Christian Bale in, I would think that he's one of the worst actors ever.
Oh man, I just cannot wait to get into the Christian Bale segment of the episode. It's just it's so funny. It's so good. That might be my favorite rant in cinema history. That
I agree. So if we're starting at the start, the film opens with Marcus being asked to sell his body to science, and he sells it at the price of a kiss, which I think came off as sex work. I don't know. It was an odd opening to take, but also I don't understand how fusing a human with an endoskeleton. I don't know why Serena thinks that's going to cure cancer.
Yeah, I know, man. Like, I suppose, yeah, from Cyberdyne's point of view, it sort of takes a leap forward in the science world, and to be fair, like the CGI and stuff on Marcus is pretty great for 2009. But I do agree.
Matthew, don't kid yourself.
You're not a fan?
This film cost $200 million. Where the fuck did it go?
I know, yeah.
There's
probably
not one
CGI,
good.
Arnie.
There's not one good effect. I love that this film continues the wonderful motif of a Terminator just throwing their prey a few meters to the left instead of actually just murdering them.
Throwing their prey. Man, the T-600s in this film, they have the aim is so shit. They're so bad.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why.
But also, like...
Go ahead, man.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the huge giant Terminators? Just use them.
Yeah.
Just use that.
Yeah. Any other type seems particularly useless.
I know, man. What were we gonna say there before I interrupted you?
Um. Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that they look like about like 30 feet wide. Like just the endoskeletons just look like they've been hitting the gym
Yeah,
hardcore.
hitting the J. Oh yeah, big time, man, big time. Like, what do you think of the look? Oh, like, how do you think? What do you think of the like the? I know we've mentioned the pro CGI, but the limited use of practical effects in the film. Like, do you think it works?
No, I don't think it works. Because for us, this film isn't set in the future. This is our past actually.
Yeah.
But I think you have to make I think you have to be more realistic in your choices of technology because
It's a good point.
if you're gonna set a film in the future that has technology overrunning the world, set it so far in the future that it's going to be realistic. I think setting it 9 years after the release of this film, not particularly
Yeah,
realistic for me.
I agree. We've mentioned this in the podcast before. That's a problem that sort of sci-fi films set in like the year that we're watching them in, and sort of the inconsistencies in their predictions. The world as we know it now is nowhere near that of the Terminator universe. I mean, thank God it isn't, but even scientific advancements and stuff like that, like it's nowhere near. So I do agree with you in that part. Don't set it 9 years after 2009.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning of the film, we see that John Connor's not yet considered the leader of the resistance. So he actually has to basically break into the resistance base by pin dropping into the ocean. And they really don't seem to want him there, but yet they entrust him with testing their Skynet ending device.
Yeah, like no one really seems to. Well, I mean, yeah, because he's not, as you said, he's not the leader of the resistance at this point. So he really has no massive authority, really, does he? Apart from being Sarah Connor's child.
But I mean, he was like the only survivor of that entire opening sequence. So I have no idea why he isn't higher ranked.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Sort of adds in for me. There's no real suspense in any action scene with Kyle Reese and John Connor because given that Kyle Reese is John Connor's dad, so it just avoids all logic there because you sort of know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the movie could have decided to hugely subvert our
It
expectations,
could have, yeah.
but it's a Mick G film. We know it won't.
Yeah. Who directed this, by the way?
Mick G.
Who's Mick G?
That's his name for whatever reason.
Oh. What's his actual name? Mick G?
Yeah. Like I mean, we'll get into it further later, but like, have you not listened to
Oh,
the
sorry,
Christian Bale
sorry.
rant where it's like Mick G, Mick G?
No, wait, what?
Yeah,
Terminator.
but
Sorry.
he's famous for making like incredibly mediocre films.
Oh,
Like, to be
okay.
fair, he directed a lot of episodes of Chuck, so he gets my respect off the back of that. But from his reputation, he apparently directs quite mediocre films in general.
Pity. That's a pity.
Yeah. Uh, I really don't understand the war from the Terminator side. Obviously, from the human side, they want to kill the Terminator so that they can survive. But we've been told that the Terminators think that uh, humans are a roadblock to their existence. But you already exist. So if you don't go on the attack, you'll continue to exist. I just don't
Yeah,
understand it.
and that's the whole thing for me. What is the end goal for the Terminators? Like, once you get world domination, what more is there to achieve? You're all machines.
Yeah, because obviously it's not to end the world because they want to continue to exist, and it's not to rule the world because they kill all the humans. And like the only people that they take prisoner, they either want to turn into infiltration Terminators or they want to, you know, basically just act as a concentration camp and eventually kill them. So world domination isn't their goal, as in
Yeah.
like subjugation of humans isn't their goal, and world annihilation isn't their goal. So their goal seems to just be existence. But I mean, you can just exist in like a
Yeah,
warehouse. You know,
I know.
it's
Yeah,
not like they're going into their cars and going back to their suburban family life.
their American Beauty lives. We have to mention American Beauty in every podcast.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
we managed to squeeze it into talking about Up, so I guess we can probably do it to any film.
I know, man. And the thing is, see, the Resistance are like, I know they're trying their best, but they plan to bomb Skynet HQ, knowing that there's still human prisoners in there. They're just like, yeah, fuck it, bomb it. Who
Yeah.
cares?
I mean, I guess that's meant to show like the grisly reality of war, but this film
Yeah, I
doesn't come
suppose.
off as
Yeah,
the war film it should be
yeah.
because it's so sanitized by being a 12.
It's definitely harmed by the rating, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's a moment when Kyle Reese is trying to escape from the Terminators with the help of Marcus, but Kyle Reese is taken captive, and Marcus falls from the Terminator plane, and instead of falling into the water and sinking, he like skims the water like a stone. His body just bounces along the current.
Oh, that must be the Cyberdyne robot in him, I guess. Oh man,
I
this
mean, I
film's
just don't
just
understand.
so weird. It's such a strange film, man. Like,
Yeah,
I have more to say about Marcus and John Connor later, but oh my
sure.
god, that's a weird one.
Well, speaking of Kyle Reese, Anton Yelchin had actually said that he tried to portray the character in the same way that Michael Biehn had, in that he didn't want to like make the character appear weaker despite his young age, and I think he failed because
They're nothing alike
Kyle
for
Reese
me.
comes off as a weak little bitch in this film.
See, I'm a big Anton Yelchin fan. I think he's great in the new Star Trek films, and obviously his passing was tragic and stuff. But in this film, he's it's not his best performance. Let's just say, like it's not the classic Kyle Reese, is it?
No, yeah, I was disappointed just because I mean even Jai Courtney I think does a better job, but I suppose he's given more screen time, but
Yeah. Oh, with
yeah,
Jai
just
Courtney. Oh, what a
just
guy.
no one works for me in the role like Michael Biehn does. Like that.
Yeah,
That's why
he's just so
Terminator
good.
is my favorite film of the franchise. People seem to favor Terminator 2, but you got to remember Terminator 1 didn't have Edward Furlong and it had Michael Biehn. So those are
Win-win.
two big pluses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
man, see the
huge
first two
win-win.
Terminators. It baffles me how the franchise can stoop so low from the first two. It's just crazy. And
Yeah,
I think we mentioned this in our original Terminator episode. Like, it, how long did it take to get a sequel for Terminator? Like, it was Terminator the original.
it
It
was
was like
7 years I think.
that is unheard of now. That is crazy, man.
Yeah, I mean, even the turnaround between Salvation and Genesis was only 6 years, and that was going from shit film to shit film.
Yeah, I know, man. And to be fair, I think they've redeemed it with Dark Fate. I think I might have overrated it in the review because that was like I think we recorded
Yeah,
that straight after we saw it. But I'll link that in the description below. But honestly, I think Dark Fate's pretty great still.
yeah. I mean, Dark Fate is sort of like it's kind of like the Force Awakens of the
It's a
Star
good
Wars
point.
franchise, where it's very evident that they've done a bit of a rehash, but it's still done in an enjoyable way. So you can kind of criticize it for the lack of originality, but it doesn't make it an inherently bad film. But this
You're
is an
right, man.
inherently bad film.
I mean, no, you've hit the nail on the head there. Right? That was a great point. It's a great point. And I suppose like
Okay,
actually, yeah,
yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say like I suppose it does work in the Force Awakens, but I don't know if it's got I don't know if it warrants another sequel. Like, do you think we'll see another sequel to it?
To Dark Fate.
Mm-hmm.
I read up last night that due to poor box office performance, they've cancelled all planned films,
Oh, that's a
which is
pity.
kind of devastating.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they should they should continue. For fuck's sake, continue to ride the high. You know, because
Yeah.
Terminator Genisys was meant to start a whole new trilogy, and obviously that shot itself. So I mean, I just think they should recognize success when they see it.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. That's a great point. Agreed.
So I think it's time to play who has the worst accent.
Go for it. Go for it. Who's your shout?
The two biggest contenders are Sam Worthington and Christian Bale,
Yeah.
because Christian Bale, you can't necessarily hear his Welsh accent, but it doesn't sound quite right. But Sam Worthington straight up just says some stuff in his Australian accent, like
Yeah.
especially like nearer the end, he's just Australian.
See Christian Bale in the rant, and we'll get onto the rant later, because
Yeah,
it's his rant. He still maintains the illusion that he's John Connor.
it's bizarre.
I know, I know. I think John. I think I was going to say. I think John Connor. I think Christian Bale's got it for me, but Sam Worthington is close. He is close.
I have to say Christian Bale's never sounds American. Like it is, like it's more bizarre. But Sam Worthington doesn't have the worst American accent. He has the worst performance because he can't maintain the American accent.
Yeah.
But when he has the American accent, it's good.
One thing I
I
wanted
mean,
to ask.
sort of
Sorry, mate,
like
go ahead.
I don't think if there wasn't Sam Worthington doing such a terrible job, like I don't think there'd be anything to laugh about in this film. So because I mean the film doesn't have jokes, so I mean at least it provided something that I could enjoy.
This is my favorite review of yours, just because it's so honest and brutal. You're like, it's not funny. It doesn't have any jokes. I love that. One thing I wanted to ask about Christian Bale, right, was do you think he is an overrated actor because of his method acting? Because I was watching a documentary on Christian Bale on Screen Rant. They did like a 20-30 minute documentary on his method acting, and I think he is generally a good actor, but do you think he is overrated?
Yeah, I mean everyone's like up the ass of method actors, but I mean they never turn in a good performance, do they?
The one that springs to mind for me is Jared Leto, and as in not a good performance, because like some of the shit he
Yeah,
did was really, really weird.
I mean obviously that could be down to sort of the butchering of his performance as they claim, but
Yeah,
I enjoyed Jared Leto's performance, but I mean, it's nowhere near as good as other performances of the Joker.
I
So
agree.
I guess it's fair to say that, I mean, method acting seems to be sort of 50-50, because sometimes you get a Heath Ledger, but sometimes you get a Jared Leto,
Yeah.
sometimes you get a Christian Bale, and then sometimes you get like a Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln.
Hmm.
I don't really know how Daniel Day-Lewis does stay in character for Abraham Lincoln. Like if he steps outside and he sees the car, he's like, what witchcraft is this?
What
Like
witchcraft?
I don't
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, because I know I think when he was starring in Gangs of New York, he like there was some weird shit that went on with that. Like I think he stayed in like a log cabin like in the woods by himself, and he got like trench foot or something. Like I know he nearly died from like not accepting Western modern medicine. Like Daniel Day-Lewis is just a weird dude. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's
but
interesting.
what are your overall thoughts on method acting? Because I mean, it seems to me that like, if you're a good actor, you wouldn't need to method act, because you don't need to embody the role to just show up on the day and do it.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. And for me, it sort of depends on how like integral the character is that you're playing, and how sort of because obviously method acting sort of depends on it's a somewhat of a character study. Like for me, I think it's reasonable for I think it's reasonable for like if Christian Bale wants to change his body shape for a role, all the power to him. But likewise, like he doesn't have to do it. I mean, we've seen like obviously in Endgame, like Chris Hemsworth was wearing a bodysuit to portray like a bigger Thor, so he could have done that for Dick Cheney and Vice. So, but it's totally up to the actor. Like I'm not against it completely, and it works because Christian Bale's had a great career, and obviously Heath Ledger as the Joker is one of the performances of the century. So yeah,
Yeah,
what are your
yeah,
thoughts, man?
yeah, I agree with you that sort of I think it's more important, say if you're portraying a historical figure, because
Mhm.
then you have to become that character in order to give a respectful portrayal. But I
Yeah.
mean, if it's a fictional character, you're meant to give your own interpretation, your own take of it. So I
Yeah.
really don't think you need to like step inside the role in order to play it well.
That's a great point, man. I think you've nailed it in the head there because like historical figures, it is I suppose it is more important, like you said, to get the realness and the likelihood to the character. So for a character that's fake, it is up to it's I suppose it's up to the actors disclosures. Is that the right word? For them,
Discretion.
discretion. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah.
I mean, Marcus clearly seems to have redeemed himself, and it seems that he's acting on free will. But then Skynet seems to suggest that they've been programming him to infiltrate the entire time. But then we see that he has a conscience. We see that he has free will. So none of that, none of that seems authentic to me. Also, obviously, when they find Marcus, they assume that he's just entirely machine. But I mean, like Marcus is just a human with he's just a human with like a removable brain chip. So if you just take the chip out of his brain, like he'll become just like the perfect assassin. I mean, like John Connor's best friend was a T-800, and yet he's like, yeah, and that was just completely Terminator. That was 100% Terminator.
Yeah.
So how can he not believe that something that was born a human could possibly, be on his side?
Yeah. It's a sort of similar thing to like I can't remember what movie we were talking about with this. It was like, you know when a character believes, like obviously something happens in their universe, but they can't believe another thing. I think it was something to do with time travel. Can you remember what we were talking about? Like the character believes in aliens, but doesn't believe in time travel. Do you remember what movie we were talking about with that?
Oh, it was Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow. It's a sort of similar vein to that. Like, why doesn't John Connor believe that a human cannot become a Terminator? Like, it's not outside the realm of possibility.
No, absolutely not. Because I mean, literally, his greatest ally in T2 was a Terminator. So I,
Yeah.
I, I just, I
Oh
mean,
god.
he's literally had people sent back from the future to tell him shit about the future, and yeah, he's like, nah, ridiculous,
Yeah.
human Terminator.
Yeah.
What are you on about?
I know. Oh god. I just want to know whose fault it is for that character. Is it Christian Bale's, or is it the director, or is it the writer? A
Well, I
mix of the
mean,
three.
like John Connor is barely the main character of the film. He's not in it any more than Sam Worthington, and Sam Worthington's performance is way better. So, I mean, the writing isn't particularly bad. Like, I have no issue with the writing. So it must be Christian Bale.
Must be, man. I just can't wait to get into his rant.
I mean, I have like a shocking amount of just like paragraphs of like insane diatribes. So I'll start with my first one.
Go for it.
I'm just gonna read this through. It's not gonna make sense just
No, go
because I
for it,
wrote
mate.
this at
Go for it.
3 a.m. Okay, so John Connor does not seem in any way an exceptional leader, but like he seems to consider himself some sort of like messiah figure. But it seems as evidenced by Terminator Dark Fate, that a different leader will always rise up and defeat the machines. So uh, like just as Judgment Day is in as fuck's sake, just as Judgment Day is inevitable, like so too is a leader rising up against
Yeah,
the machines. So
completely.
like John Connor seems like so far up his own ass. Like he's like, oh yeah, I'm a prophet. I'm the best guy in the world. I'm your savior. And
Yeah,
they're like, John Connor, you aren't even the leader of the resistance. He's like, I will be, and I'm gonna save all of you. And that's why we need to save Kyle Reese so that I'm born. Like
yeah.
he just has a huge like he's just an egomaniac.
Yeah, and that's completely like, and that's where maybe Dark Fate does a disservice to the character in some people's eyes, because it sort of said that a new leader will always rise up, so to speak. So it sort of reduces the resistance's reliance on John Connor as a character. And at the end of the day, he's really not that important to the Terminator lore. He's just famous because he's the offspring of someone who actually is important. You know?
Yeah, like Sarah Connor is the real hero in the Terminator franchise.
Yeah,
But like I don't think it was just Dark Fate's responsibility. Like I think it's just painfully obvious that if
yeah.
John Connor wasn't born, there would be an equally capable leader of the resistance. Like I really think he really isn't some sort of, you know, messianic savior.
Completely, man. That's an excellent point. That's a really good point, because I've never been a huge fan of that character really, and I always preferred the actual Terminators, and maybe that's because Arnie is just so charismatic. But like, what do you think about bringing like clone Arnie's into this film? Do you think it was needed?
I don't think it was needed because I knew that it was coming, but I didn't miss his presence because it's such a different film.
Yeah,
You know, I don't know. I always just pictured the T-800s were like an early Terminator. I never thought that it would be that many years into the war that they've only just developed the T-800s.
Me
So
too.
I was kind of I think it was just because they were maybe trying to spare their budget. They were like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, these are the early models that are throughout the film. But no, I would have liked to see the T-800s used more frequently in the film, and further models.
Me too, man. Me too. And um, see, the thing is, like what you said there about the T800s being an earlier model, I always thought that as well because we always see in like future films, like with the T1000, is it the TX in Terminator 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're always getting outclassed and stuff as well. So it is unusual for them. This is obviously like an early stage in the war, it seems. So it was an unusual choice.
Okay, Matthew. I think it's time. I think it's time to discuss. You know, like Christian Bale v. Shane Hurlbut, Dawn of Rage. I think it's time.
Well, good for you. What a guy, Christian
So
Bale. Go
so for
for it.
anyone that doesn't know, on the set of Terminator Salvation, director of photography or cinematographer Shane Hurlbut was fixing a light or adjusting a light for a certain scene, which I did some research and I'll tell you what I believe to be the scene later. But jeez, so Christian Bale fucking loses it against this guy and absolutely reels him in like this full 4 minute invective. Like it's the most aggressive rant you'll ever hear. So can you leave a link to it in the description
The
below?
link will be in the description below and the time code. I'll time code this like Callum and Matthew talking Christian Bale rant or something.
And it's the most sensational thing I've ever seen in
It's
my
so good,
life.
man. It's so good. I've been working on the thumbnail for the video, and I think you'll like it. I think you'll like it. Put it that way. It might have Christian Bale mid rant.
Okay.
We'll see.
Uh, oh, I hate it so much. It's so hilarious because
I
all
think he has
right,
any right to be angry.
okay, well we can debate that. So I'll tell you what I think the scene was. There's a moment where John Connor is listening back to a taping of Sarah Connor giving him advice, and then his wife Kate appears, and there's sort of like this empty space behind Kate, and it's cutting back and forth between the two characters as they're discussing. And I wouldn't have known this if I hadn't like been on the set of a film that like they obviously obviously I should have known this, but they filmed the entire scene from one angle and then they filmed the entire scene from another angle and then they just cut those two together.
I didn't actually know that. I
So
thought
I
it'd be
think
two
the
separate
black,
cameras.
yeah, no, I mean that can be the case, but I think in this instance, because it was only two shots, like they were only doing a close up on Christian Bale, then like a mid shot on Bryce Dallas Howard. Like I think they probably just filmed the scene twice and cut them together, and this is why. Because I think that when they were on the close up on Christian Bale, there's a moment in the rant where he says like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like just walking up behind Bryce like that." So I think that as it was on Christian Bale, Shane walked up behind Bryce Dallas Howard because because the rant sort of makes it seem like he was just like walking past like behind the director or something, and he got in Christian Bale's eye line. But I think that he physically stepped into the scene to check the light. Like I think that he like got behind Bryce Dallas Howard to check the light. I was just standing behind her, like looking Christian Bale in the eye. And if that's the case, I get it.
Yeah.
But because
Oh my
that,
god.
like because to be fair, that would 100% put off Christian Bale's performance, and I would not expect him to be able to perform in that because if he's physically stepped in the scene and he's just like peeking his head up behind
It's
Bryce
change
Dallas
a light
Howard,
bulb.
like yeah, like obviously you're not going to be able to pay attention to that. So to be fair, I think that it was fair enough that Christian Bale got angry, but like to say that they're done professionally because he ruined one take, I think that's where it crosses the line.
Have you seen the interviews of Christian Bale apologizing about this?
Yeah, so the day after, actually, he called into the day after this audio was released. He called into a American radio show K Rock to say that he acted like a punk and say that he was sorry. But I don't know. Did he need to apologize?
I
I
think
think just
I think
apologize
so.
privately.
Yeah,
But I mean,
maybe.
it sort of gives the film clout. I mean, no one was, like this is by far the only like the most interesting thing involved in this film. Nothing interesting in the film happened. So I mean, you sort of need some clout
Yeah.
context, I think.
I just want to know what would have happened if Christian Bale caught the guy who was recording it. That would have been hilarious.
I assume they just like kept the cameras rolling, and whoever leaked
just
it
just to
was up.
fuck with him.
Yeah, well, no, like I mean, they were filming the scene, so I mean, Christian Bale doesn't call cut or anything, so I assume they just kept the cameras rolling, and then the person who leaked it just like didn't have the balls to release the video as well. So I assume they just released the audio, just so that they didn't get fired.
Yeah, like, is there a version on YouTube where someone's done like a recreation of the video?
Yeah, it's got 4.5 million views, and it's literally just like them pretending that they've got the video, but it's bullshit.
Yeah, I'm just on that now. 4.5 billion views. That is crazy. That is crazy. But like, yeah, well, I'll link that in the description. But that is, as you said perfectly, mate. It's probably the most famous moment of the film.
I think it's maybe like my favorite piece of trivia, uh, you know, of behind the scenes content
Yeah,
to do with film.
agreed. No, same man. It's just so hilarious.
So moving away from that, nearer the end of the film, Marcus has, against his own knowledge, like lured John Connor into a trap, and Skynet is able to convince Marcus that he's responsible for the Resistance's termination. But the Resistance are the ones that discovered or invented the signal that drew the Terminators to them. So despite like John Connor's reservations about Marcus and about the signal, the Resistance used the signal themselves. Like that wasn't Marcus's doing. He had
Yeah,
no involvement in that.
yeah.
So like I think he is not responsible at all for the
Oh,
the
no,
the
not at all.
termination of the Resistance.
I actually do
Yeah.
feel
So
quite bad for Marcus especially at the end of the film when he saves John Connor. That was a good moment of the film. Generally, I thought.
yeah, I mean it acts as quite a good redemptive arc because I mean you sort of forget that he's a murderer,
Yeah,
and then you just power through that.
yeah,
So I mean I guess he needed to actively do something in order to feel like he used his second chance well. So
absolutely.
I guess that the symbol of that was him giving his heart to John Connor. So yeah, I respected the redemptive arc in this film. It's probably the only standout good piece of writing
Yeah,
or character arc.
yeah.
So you previously mentioned like the CGI Arnold Schwarzenegger. What do you think of the CGI? Because
I
I
think it's
don't
good.
actually think it's that bad.
I think it's good for
Yeah,
2009. It looks quite like him.
yeah, because people sort of compare that to like the Scorpion King in the Mummy Returns, as like horrible rubber CGI. But I don't think it's that bad,
It's
especially
okay.
because it's meant to be a robot imitating a human. Like if
Yeah,
they could have done CGI back in 1984, they probably wouldn't have cast an actor anyway,
yeah,
because they want to show that they're somewhat not human.
yeah. See, Arnie, like in his peak, he was huge, man. Like he was. I don't know if you've seen Pumping Iron, on the documentary about him on Netflix. It's about him and Lou Ferrigno.
No, I haven't seen it.
So good, man. I don't know if it's still on Netflix, but Arnie was a beast. He still is a beast, but like he's a tank, all right.
Yeah, 100%. So I've written another another just rant,
Go for it,
but I
dude.
mean
Go
you
for it.
can you can chime in at any point because I genuinely don't remember if we've already discussed this because I obviously didn't listen back to our Terminator episode.
No, go for it,
Have
man.
we discussed like which came first, like John Connor sending Kyle Reese back or Kyle Reese being John Connor's father?
I think so, but I want to get into it actually because it's interesting. Let's do it again.
Okay, so this makes no sense what I've written. So I've written that it's possible that the first version of John Connor that sent Kyle Reese back wasn't Kyle Reese's son, And then when Kyle Reese went back and had sex with Sarah Connor, he became John Connor's father, and a new John Connor was created in the newly established timeline, and he looked different and he had different genetics, but it was just that now he was significant because he was also fated to be the leader of the resistance. And all along, it was actually just the badassery of Sarah Connor that grew him into the leader of the resistance, not the fact that he was also related to Kyle Reese, who was an impressive soldier in the resistance. So Kyle Reese, yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? And then I'll go into some further thoughts.
I like that because it makes sense. Because in some instances, like it almost seemed unlikely that John Connor could be like, how I don't know how to put this, but you know the way it's always predetermined that like Kyle Reese is John Connor's father. It would sort of make more sense if it was a more spur of the moment decision from in a Kyle Reese sense. That like I don't know if that makes sense, but I do agree with what you're saying. Is what I mean.
Yeah, like people talk about it as like sort of a chicken and the egg
Yeah.
situation, which came first, but one had to come first because this is to do with time travel. So I think that it must have been that Kyle Reese wasn't his dad, and that he sent Kyle Reese back to just protect his mom, and that Sarah was, say, already pregnant with John Connor, and you know the first time it ever happened, John Connor wasn't the son of Kyle Reese, but things changed when he sent Kyle Reese back for the very first time.
I like that. I like
hate
that.
these
I like
movies.
that.
I hate these movies making me have to think like this.
Especially bad ones.
Yeah, but there is a popular theory that in the first Terminator film, there's a voicemail message left for Sarah Connor by a character voiced by James Cameron that says like, "Oh, I had fun on our date the other day." So people have theorized that that was actually John Connor's first father, and that in the first ever timeline or interpretation of events, that was his father.
Oh, cool.
And then maybe the first time that Kyle Reese was sent back, he became John Connor's he became John Connor's father in the newly
I like
established
that
timeline.
though. I like that.
I'm sorry, I have like I don't know, the sun's getting to me, like I'm going insane. Like I don't know what's happening.
It's okay.
But
It makes sense. I like that. I like that.
yeah, but I guess that it was never important that he was the prophesized savior. It was important that people believed he was.
Yeah,
So I mean,
the
it doesn't
idea of
actually
it.
matter. Like
Mhm.
to be honest, you know, they haven't been DNA tests. Kyle Reese may actually never have been John Connor's father. We
Yeah.
just assume because Kyle Reese had sex with Sarah Connor that he's John Connor's dad. He may not have been, and he may never have been.
Yeah.
But I guess that's not important. It's just important that people believe that.
It's a great point, man.
Uh,
Yeah, like it's
uh,
it's sort of really it's word of like as long as people believe in the idea of that they'll think it'll happen sort of thing. So and like we said about like the chicken and the egg, I'm of the belief that it was the Kyle Reese. I like the theory that it could have been like Kyle Reese might not have been his original dad. I actually really like that a lot.
yeah. So this film, in classic Terminator style, ends in a factory with molten lava and shit. And I don't know why. I don't know why they always feel the need to end a film like that, because
No.
it's basically the blandest setting that you could put it in, and it was perfectly forgivable in the first film, because you know that was the first to do it.
Yeah.
But it's just becoming quite tired at this point.
It is, man. It is. Like they've ran out of action set pieces. It seems.
Yeah, and the you know big final action set piece of the film is them blowing up Skynet. And I thought that the point of the signal that they developed was that they would basically switch off all of the machines, which would make them docile, and then they could blow them up. But the signal doesn't work. They don't turn off the machines, but they just blow up the factory anyway, and it works.
This film is devoid of logic as well. Like there are things about it I do like. You know, I like Marcus saving John Connor. I like that a lot. But it's just it is a mess, isn't it?
Yeah. So they never needed the signal to succeed because they could just blow it up anyway. So what was the point of any of this film?
I don't know.
It just hurts my head.
Hurts my head as
honestly.
well. Also
And we'll talk about like Terminator Genisys is even more of a mindfuck. So I mean, we'll talk about that, and I'll get quite angry probably.
oh, I love Genesis.
Uh, did you have any final points on Terminator Salvation?
um, nothing actually, mate. No points at all. Do you have anything?
So I'd love to hear your rate. I'd love to hear your rating for the film.
So I think character-wise, not great. I actually think Marcus is probably the most compelling character in it, and I think his character arc is good. John Connor, not
Yeah,
great. Cal Reese, not great. What's his? Is it Kate? Is his wife? Isn't it?
Kate. Yeah,
Not Bryce Dallas Howard, not great. Uh, so I probably. I think this film's really strange tonally. Even like it has such a very strange grayish color palette, which we haven't really seen in a
yeah.
Terminator film. So it is okay. I'll give it a 5. It's okay. Okay. What
Okay.
do you give it then?
Yeah, it's kind of strange because I didn't hate it. I kind of enjoyed watching it, but I guess that's because I could just make fun of it. So it's not like a positive of the film to say that I enjoyed it because I enjoyed it because it was bad.
Mhm.
So I do kind of respect the originality of making a Terminator film a war film because we hadn't seen that before.
Sure.
We'd only ever seen pre-Judgment Day, the pre-Judgment Day universe for Terminator. So sort of seeing a post-Judgment Day war film is actually quite an intriguing concept, but they failed spectacularly in
Completely.
generating that vision.
Completely.
So the film is boring and bland. It looks terrible. Shane Hurlbutt, the cinematographer, deserved to get yelled at for how bad the cinematography is. Uh, uh, yeah, it's just so boring. But
This has
in the
been
end,
my
I kind
favorite
of
review of
enjoyed it.
yours.
I'm just so sad, honestly. Like it was just such a depressing watch. Like, I had so many issues with it. Uh, the acting is consistently terrible. Like a 4.5.
That's better than I thought you were gonna give it. So hey, mate, I thought your points were really great. I thought that was a really great review.
It's
We spent nearly
like
an hour talking about
what's the
Terminator
lowest
Salvation.
I know I'm embarrassed, but like what's the longest sort of like what's the lowest score I've ever given? Like did I retroactively give A Bug's Life like 3.5 or something?
Something like that. I think Bug's Life is the lowest, and then this is near there.
I think it's because like I find it difficult to give a film like I don't think it's respectful of a film to give it like a 0 out of 10 because you have to appreciate the work that went into it to
Sure.
some degree. Like I don't think you can
Fixing the
go and
light
say
bulbs.
this film is worth. Yeah, like I don't think you can say this film is worth 0%
Yeah,
because I don't think that's respectful of the filmmaking process because it's difficult to make a good film,
I agree.
admittedly.
That's a great point. No,
But
that's a great point.
that there's a lot of components that have to come together to make a good film because you need good visuals, you need good acting, you need a good script, and sometimes films only lack one of those, and it makes it fail dramatically. But you still have to respect the things about it that does work.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think you've
so
nailed it there, man.
I think I think a 4.5 for this film is fair.
Completely, I think you've nailed it. That's a really great point. A lot of people are quite harsh on movies, but then, like you said, you've been in a film set before, and there's a lot of effort that goes into the production, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of days where it overran and things took a lot longer than people expected. It's quite an arduous experience to make a film and to make a good film because I'm sure a lot of filmmakers just like take half the day off. They do like one take, it's shit. They're like, okay, good enough in the bin. In like in the can, it's done.
Yeah,
But it's a lot harder to try and make a good film by actually having the dedication to do constant retakes of the scene.
100%.
So like I don't think I have what it takes to be involved in the movie business because I don't think I have the patience or like the creativity to recognize when something's going well or going bad.
You never. I think you're right, creative man. I think there's definitely a future there. 100%.
I
Don't
don't
write
know.
it off yet. Don't write it off.
I definitely wouldn't have the balls like as a director to tell like my actors like that was shit. Okay, like I assume it was just Mick G didn't want to like tell Christian Bale because like he heard how like based on the rant he knew that like he shouldn't rile him up, so like he probably just didn't want to tell him that he was doing a terrible job.
I know, man. But listen, did you want to hop right into our second and final film today? Terminator Genisys.
Yeah.
Now,
Like we've almost talked about Terminator Salvation like as much as we talk about usually like 3 to 5 films.
I know, I love that though. I love that. That's probably one of my favorite reviews we've done, just because it was so like it was funny. Listen, man, one thing about this film that is probably will always be remembered for it was the trailer, the spoilerific trailer.
Yes.
And
I think that's what drew me to not watch the film initially because I was just like, oh well, they've ruined it,
yeah,
and they had.
they had like rewatching the trailer, man. It gives everything away, really. Bit mostly
Yeah,
everything apart from the final act, which is ridiculous.
yeah. I mean, when you've already made a bad film, and like, but by the time a film's being edited, you know that you've made a bad film. I mean, sometimes on the day, like on set, you don't know that you're making a bad film. You know, sometimes on paper a film can seem good, and you can on the day think, oh yeah, this is great. But when you edit it together, you quickly realize it's a bad film. So like before studios put a film out, like they know how it's going to be received. Like they know it's a bad film. So like whenever they were editing this film and then editing the trailer, you would think they'd be like, oh well, we know we've made a bad film. Let's at least not give the game away to
Yeah,
get butts in seats.
yeah. Do you think some directors, when they've edited the film, do you think they're in denial that it's bad, or do you think they genuinely think it's bad? Like, do you think they don't think it's bad? If you know what I mean. Like, do you think they're in denial, or do you think they know that it's not great?
I think with like directors, you know some like sometimes directors direct their own script, but more often than not, you know they're directing someone else's script.
Sure.
So I think when directors have signed on to like the concept of a film, and then there's a script, and then they're directing someone else's script, they probably don't realize until the editing phase that it's bad, and they probably do, and they recognize, oh, this did not come together well. But
Yeah.
I think when a director directs his own script or her own script, I think they're probably like, oh, this is fucking genius.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like when they're editing it together because they're able to enact their vision entirely. You know, it's their script, it's their film, they've edited it. So like they're probably like, this is fucking genius.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
This
they're
is
probably like
gold.
too far up their own ass to realize it's bad.
That's really interesting you mentioned that, bro, because a lot of people think that this film sort of rips too much off from Terminator 1. And it directly rips off, well, it directly recreates so many scenes from it. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, because there's some of them, like with the T-800 and like the punks. I really like that and stuff, but I don't know. I still prefer the original.
Oh, I prefer the original by far. Yeah, certainly. And I have a lot later on about like the fuck's sake. Okay, yeah, I have a little bit here. So, like I understand that studios' only goal in like quote unquote revitalizing a franchise is to make money. So if they think they can make money, they'll completely reboot a franchise.
Yeah.
But like they're whenever you do this, like it's never critically well received. So like you always leave like a permanent damage to the franchise.
Mhm.
Like so like when you know that you're just ripping off like ripping off your own franchise and making it worse, like
Yeah.
really they should have the insight to know, one, like we're not going to do well financially, and two, we're going to get like critically kicked in the ass. So like I have no idea why studios really like pursue
It's a
this.
recipe for disaster.
Pretty much, yeah. I just don't get it.
I agree, man. I'm completely on your side there.
I have a headache reading this because, I mean, like the script of this film, my notes are just like the insane ramblings of a madman. Like,
Oh man.
just so little of what I've written makes sense because it was written at like 4:30 in the morning. Uh,
Like, what are your
you're gonna have
thoughts?
fun editing this episode, just me crying.
I'm keeping that in. It's real. That's real movie. That's what the subscribers come here to see.
They come to listen to my pain.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, this film sort of makes the curious decision to. I don't know why. Well, I don't know why it recasts a lot of people. It just why not? Why not? Just why? I think Anton. Do you think they could have had Anton Yelchin back in this film?
I mean, I'm glad they didn't because honestly, despite the probably popular opinion, I actually preferred Jai Courtney's performance
Yeah,
to
and the thing
Anton
is,
Yelchin.
it seems like they sort of, I don't know, hopped in the Game of Thrones bandwagon and got Emilia Clarke as well, and she was probably very famous at the time as well. And what do you think of her, Sarah Connor? So I think she's very good.
I mean, she obviously does. She doesn't capture the magic of Linda Hamilton,
Sure,
uh,
who
and
does?
her
Who does?
and her exactly, and her American accent is questionable at best. But I mean, Emilia Clarke's great in everything.
She's a
So
delight. She's so nice. Yeah,
yeah, she is delightful, but I don't know that she fits this role.
I agree, man. And the thing that upsets me in the film is they get a new T1000, but just use Patrick.
Do you not think a lot of them are way too old though?
I think, but yeah, I suppose so. But like, it would be funny to like see like a 70-year-old man like run like that. That would have been great.
Yeah,
But I don't know. I just what is it? What's his name? Patrick. I want to say
Robert
Harris.
Patrick.
Robert Patrick.
Robert Patrick.
Robert Patrick. Where am I getting Patrick Harris from? Robert Patrick. He is just so good. He's just so iconic. I love him in that role.
Yeah, just yeah. None of the performances in this film match their 1984 equivalent. You know,
True.
like you should never try to reboot or revitalize a franchise if you can't do it better. Like
Yeah.
if you know that you can improve on the perfection of 1984's Terminator, don't do it. Like
Yeah.
you're
No, that's a
only
great point.
gonna like sully the perspective of the franchise.
Yeah. It's a great point, man.
Uh,
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of become more of a joke character in these films as well. Like there's no real intimidation there.
yeah, I mean, the only time he actually played, like the only time on screen that Arnold Schwarzenegger appeared as a villainous Terminator was the first one.
Yeah.
So like all of the subsequent performances have been like a fun, goofy, wacky character that's their best friend.
Yeah.
So like yeah,
Yeah.
we haven't seen like you know a a nuanced, menacing performance from him since 1984
I know. And that's a pity because that's arguably my favorite Arnie performance.
with in Terminator Genisys or in
No, no,
Terminator One.
Terminator to 1984.
So, admittedly, I did quite enjoy the opening sequences of war.
I
That
agree.
we see, it kind of hones in on the concept of a war film for the Terminator franchise, the Terminator Salvation tried, but it does it better because it's not just like a gray, dusty universe, which I suppose a gray, dusty universe is more realistic. But I kind of like to see, I kind of enjoyed seeing like more of an X-Men Days of Future Past
Yeah,
version of
yeah.
the future
Mm,
with sort of like neon lighting.
I love that.
I don't know. I sort of much preferred that aesthetic to the one that we saw in Terminator Salvation.
I love that.
And I
And
would say the biggest surprise of this film, uh, I'll just briefly mention this.
go
The
for it.
Jai Courtney's American accent is like absolutely top notch.
It's good, isn't it? It's not bad.
Yeah, like comparing him to sort of like Sam Worthington, say like, comparing like one Australian doing an American accent to another,
Yeah.
like his is leaps and bounds better.
So good. It's so good. And like the film does subvert our expectations as well, because Matt Smith is actually a villain in this film as well. Did you pick up on like because the sort of the camera sort of shows him for like 2 seconds and it sort of hovers on him for a bit. So I thought that was quite weird when I first watched it, and then obviously it's revealed that he's a undercover Skynet agent, really. So it was interesting.
Yeah, I knew in advance that he was sort of the embodiment of Skynet. So yeah, when it first lingered on him, I was like, oh well. Like I
Yeah,
did already know in advance, so I was like, oh well, it's not like it's even taken over the body of like a soldier. It's literally just the embodiment of Skynet, and I guess also Genesis.
true. Yeah, that's a good point, man. That's a good point. But like, Jack Courtney,
This
pretty good accent work.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like there was not a moment where I was like, that I could hear his actual accent breaking through. Like it
Mm,
was consistent throughout, and I
absolutely.
had huge respect for that.
Me too, man.
Uh, I don't have a huge amount of notes on this film, and I'm glad because I don't really want to talk about it for that long.
Yeah, no, fair
Uh,
enough, man. Fair enough. It's like it's. I actually like this film. It's my guilty pleasure. I'd love to do a guilty pleasures
okay,
episode, but this would be right there. I love this.
like I do understand a perspective where you would actually quite enjoy this film, but I don't know. Even though I've only watched the Terminator films recently, I think the fact that I watched them in order, unlike this was this the first Terminator film you'd ever seen?
Yeah, yeah,
I I feel like if this is the first one you've ever seen, it's kind of odd because you don't really understand the character motivation, but like the timelines make more sense because you're not also comparing it to the previous films. So I think this film gets worse with the more knowledge of the Terminator universe you have.
yeah. That's a really great way of putting it, man. And that's actually excellent. That's probably the nail. You've hit the nail on the head there completely, bro. Because it's sort of obviously when it recreates scenes from the first film, you think that is genius. But then when you realize they're done better in the first film, you think, ah,
Yeah,
yeah, you know,
and I've watched a couple of scene comparisons, and it's kind of annoying how close they get to
yeah,
scene replication, but like it's 90% of the way there, but then they just miss the mark on really weird, obvious things. Like, it'll be like the one of the punks has like the wrong haircut for the one delivering the lines. Like it's
yeah.
so close,
I
but then
know,
they
I
just
know.
miss the mark, which I
Well,
think makes it more painstaking. Like I wish they would either just do their own thing or get it exactly right.
see the punks. They are like the best. Some of the lines in there are just so they're so bad.
Yeah, like when they ask him whether it's laundry day, they're like,
Wash day
no clean
tomorrow.
clothes.
Nothing clean, right?
Yeah, it's like I don't know that just sort of gives me like a Sam Raimi Spider-Man vibe. Like I feel like that's something that would have been in those films, which is why I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. Looks like this guy's a couple cans short
So
of a six pack.
what does that
I
mean?
don't know. I don't know.
Like he's ripped. He has a six pack
Yeah,
already. I don't know.
I
Is that an
know. I
insult?
know.
Like I don't understand.
I know.
But you mentioned the scene where it sort of lingers on Matt Smith, and that's the scene in which Kyle Reese volunteers to go back to protect Sarah Connor. And I don't know, I've written one of the weirder points of my career in movie mates, where I said when John Connor asked what makes you different, I wish Kyle had just said, "I'm the only one who wants to bang her," uh, because because we sort of find out from this film and from the first Terminator that John Connor has given Kyle Reese a picture of Sarah Connor, and I mean, I guess
Wait,
you must just get pretty desperate in the future because by looking at a photo, he's fallen in love with Sarah Connor.
is that a line in the film?
Is what a line in the film.
I'm the only one that wants to bang her.
No, that's what I said should have happened. Because I mean, to be honest, like he's like, oh, like like I'm the only like because he says I'm the only one that knows her. But I mean,
Yeah.
why is it that John Connor never goes back to protect his mom?
Man, it would have been so
Because I
much
mean,
weirder if like Jai Courtney said, "I'm the only one that wants to bang her," and John Connor's like, "No, you're not."
uh, but, but I mean, like, why does John Connor, like, obviously we've talked about in our Terminator Salvation side that there must have been one version of events where Kyle Reese wasn't John Connor's dad, and that he sent Kyle Reese back into the past. He had sex with Sarah Connor, and he became the newly established John Connor's dad.
Yeah,
So, why did John Connor that first time? Why did he ever send Kyle Reese back? Why didn't he send himself back to protect Sarah
yeah.
Connor?
It seems
Because
such
I
a
mean,
weird decision, doesn't it?
yeah, because I mean, he's told Kyle Reese, he's said to Kyle Reese, "Oh yeah, like tell her I'm here to protect you because your son John is going to be the future leader."
Yeah,
Why not just send yourself back and give her all that information anyway?
I know. It seems that's a
Uh,
really it's a good plot hole. Actually, that's a good. And another thing for me, so the T in terms of plot holes, so the T-800 and Sarah have been waiting for Skynet to send back another Terminator for it seems like years, and yet the T-800 he only brings a shotgun.
yeah, I mean, I guess it was because maybe they were just trying to distract him while she set up the rifle that
Yeah.
had like the magic Terminator killing bullet. But I mean, why didn't she have it pre-prepared? Like, if they knew exactly where the Terminator was going to land, I'm quite unimpressed that she didn't at least have the gun loaded.
To be fair, like the young Arnold versus old Arnold scene is probably my favorite bit in the film. I just love that.
Yeah.
I think it's really well done.
There was a period of about 40 minutes in the film, 40 minutes or 50 minutes, where I just didn't write a single note because I was like, I mean, this is just like it's just stealing from Terminator 1, so
Yeah.
there's nothing outstanding about it. But I would say the one truly original thing in this film is the fact that they made John Connor a Terminator and then they fucking spoiled it in the
Yeah,
trailer.
I know. Like, what do you think about that twist? If they wouldn't have shown it in the trailer, would you have liked it?
I think I quite would have. I think I would have liked it because I think the film did quite a convincing job of just saying, "Oh yeah, John Connor was attacked. He probably died," and I would have probably just accepted that. But I probably would have never guessed that he was taken over by Skynet unless they had shown that in the trailer. So I think they fucked up massively. But I mean
Maybe.
that's not the fault. That's not the fault of the film. It's not the fault of the filmmakers because trailer editors, like trailers are usually like outsourced to a different, like a specific trailer making studio. So
Sure.
it's usually not the fault of the filmmakers that these secrets get out. But it's just upsetting.
I agree, man. Like for me, it's a little strange that Sarah and Kyle don't like they don't find it weird about John being in their timeline. Like it should be obvious that he's not John for me. Why send himself back?
Really?
Yeah, because I sort of think from my perspective, like John Connor, the only reason why he wouldn't send himself back is because he has to stay in the future to like lead the resistance for me. So in that case, I sort of find it weird that he would send both Cal Reese and John Connor back. So I don't know. Maybe I'm looking too
Mm.
much into it. I don't know. But,
I don't know. Maybe it's like from what I could tell, from the opening of the film, whenever they like bomb Skynet, like the war is over, it seems. So I guess he was free to send himself back because the future no longer
oh
needs
yeah,
him.
it's a good point. That's a good point, man. And like the film does, it sort of takes the curious decision of like having Cal Reese have sort of other timeline visions and stuff, which just complicate matters a lot. Great point.
uh no, no, like this film just makes me upset. Like it's probably the worst time travel film I've ever seen because it just doesn't adhere to any of the rules that it establishes.
Yeah. Like
It
I
just,
think it has
it
so
just
much potential.
pisses me off so much.
I think the film has so much potential in there, but you're right. It is just a complete clusterfuck.
Yeah. So, do you think that Jai Courtney and Amelia Clark have any chemistry?
In a weird way, yeah. I don't know what it is, but it's some in a weird way, kind of. But 100%, I can see if people don't see that. You know what I mean? What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely lacks the magic of Linda Hamilton and
Oh yeah,
Michael Biehn, but
completely.
I don't see a complete absence of chemistry. Like I think obviously this film was made to set up like a complete trilogy. So
Mhm.
I mean, if we could, and we weirdly this is the only timeline version of events where Kyle Reese survives the events of 1984. So it's seemingly him and Sarah Connor would have went on to establish a romance in 2017, which I
Yeah,
guess would have just messed up the timeline to no end.
yeah. I agree, man. And I don't know. The thing is, I think this film has so much potential for sequels, and it is a pity that it got. Well, I mean, that these characters didn't get really more of a look in other films, but because I do think there is potential in there with the characters and where it goes with it, and even by the end, I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. But I do think as you're definitely right, it does lack the magic of Linda and Mike. What's his name?
Michael, yeah,
Michael. Yeah,
Michael Biehn.
yeah, Michael Ban.
But yeah, I also kind of agree with you that it had sequel potential because you know the previous films had sort of convinced us that John Connor was the most important character because it's always Terminators are being sent back to protect Sarah Connor so that she
Yeah,
can birth John Connor. But I
Yeah.
like that this film recognized the strength of the other characters and realized that John Connor is like the shittest character in Terminator.
Mate,
So
that's such
like
a great
they just
point. That's such a
yeah,
great
so
point.
so they just like dispatch him, and then they're assumingly just going to continue the franchise with the main characters being Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor and Arnold, which
And,
I think is
yeah,
actually really interesting.
in a weird sense, it is quite refreshing for the genre.
Yeah, but I mean, again, if they had just done another two of these films where it's them stopping Judgment Day and then realizing that Judgment Day is inevitable, and then stopping Judgment Day again and then realizing that Judgment Day is inevitable, like where else do you go with this
Yeah,
franchise?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
obviously it's called Terminator, so Terminators have to be sent back for you to fight the Terminators, and then eventually you realize, oh no, we can stop Judgment Day before it ever begins, and then that's just the same film again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where you go with this.
Do you prefer the Judgment Day is inevitable sort of scenario, or do you prefer like they stop it? Because I don't mind the Judgment Day is inevitable. I quite like that.
Yeah, I made a point on this about Terminator Rise of the Machines, in that the franchise should have been over after Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, because Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, are about saving the Connors and preparation for the war. And then T3 is the first movie that proves that Judgment Day is inevitable.
Sure.
And so far, every subsequent film have just repeated the same stories over and over. So I think the best message and the most concise storyline is just, if you just stopped at Terminator 3, if they just stopped making
Yeah.
films, then it's a neat timeline. There's no continuity errors. There's no stains on the franchise. Like they should have just stopped there.
I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head there completely. And as you said, it is the most concise storyline, and it's the one that makes the most sense for me. Uh, but um, but yeah, I mean, it is a curious decision to sort of repeat the same. I suppose it's because it is a cash grab in some instances, like to repeat the same plot over and over again. Like, I mean, it gets the clicks and it gets the bums and seats, as you'd say. So I don't know. It is a weird one, man. It is a weird one.
Yeah. In your opinion, like what acts as a better sequel to Terminator 2, Terminator
Ooh.
Rise of the Machines or Terminator Dark Fate? Personally, like I think it's Terminator Rise of the Machines, because obviously it's lacking Linda
Yeah.
Hamilton,
Mhm.
but it's at least trying to do something different, and it proves the Judgment Day is inevitable, and it ends on like sort of a dark, really interesting note that sort of like reminds me of like Avengers Infinity War,
Yeah.
where the good
Yeah.
guys actually lose, and it's a war, so everybody loses.
I
And
agree
I
with
I,
you,
th- I
man.
think to just say you can go into the past and fix it, I just prefer a darker, more dire, realistic ending.
I think yeah, completely do. Completely do. I agree actually, and I think Terminator 3 sort of fits more in tonally there as well. And like you
Yeah,
said, although it misses the mark with Linda Hamilton's appearance in it, but I don't know. I think it works better because it gives it more. Because Terminator Dark Fate's ending, it's
yeah.
I'm trying to even remember what happens in that film. I'm pretty sure it's a happy ending, right?
Well, it's
Reasonably.
basically it's basically that they delay Judgment Day, but they realize that it's still going to come eventually, and then they can maybe try and delay it again. But I mean, like it's inevitable,
It is
and
inevitable.
I
Yeah,
guess like Jai Courtney says, the reason that we can't accept that it's inevitable is because we're human. But the franchise should realize that
yeah.
Judgment Day is
No, I
inevitable
agree.
and stop making
Yeah,
films about trying to end Judgment Day.
yeah.
Like it,
Maybe
it
there's
was just kind of
potential.
painful to watch.
Maybe there's potential for more movies in a similar vein to Salvation, but better, set in the war.
No, this franchise is dead. Let it end.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Okay.
like
Fair enough.
I quite enjoyed, like if you watch Terminator 1, like Terminator 1, 2, and Rise of the Machines, that's a good storyline. If you watch Terminator 1, 2, and Dark Fate, that's a pretty good storyline. But then if you watch these films as they came out, it's a
Yeah.
fucking mess,
It
and you're
is.
like,
It is
just let
completely,
this
man.
fucking franchise die.
I'm surprised it got J.K. Simmons in this because I forgot he was in this film as well.
Oh yeah, I had no idea, and I didn't realize that he was actually playing, the police officer from 1984, which
Yeah.
I thought was very interesting.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But I do agree when you watch them in the order they came out in, it's not. It is a mess. It is a mess. But there is potential in there for, I think, for making it right. But there remains to be seen.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. So in this film, we see a much more capable Sarah Connor because a Terminator has traveled back in time to. Wait, do we ever figure out who sent the Terminator back in time to save Sarah Connor when she was 9? Because
No,
they sort of like built
no, no,
that.
it was
They built
John.
that.
I think it was John.
What?
I think so.
Surely not. No, because I think when John Connor is when John Connor's a Terminator, he says like, "Oh, I wonder who sent you back," and I don't think he's talking about himself. Maybe I'm wrong, but I
I'll
don't
just
know. I
have a wee
I
look
feel
at
like we
Wikipedia
never
here.
got clarity on that. Okay, so we see in the film a more capable Sarah Connor because she's been trained for the last 11 years or so by a T-800. But and while I think that's interesting, I think it somewhat robs her of a character arc because she starts the film as capable, she ends the film as capable. There's no character progression like
Mhm.
there was with Linda Hamilton.
Completely.
So I was kind of disappointed, and I do think it doesn't capture what the first Terminator was about,
I
and it,
agree,
it
man.
just it misses the mark really.
It does miss the mark. I do like the way they don't mess about in sort of giving her that character arc though, in a sense that she's already a natural born leader in this, and she helps she helps calm down like a young Cal Reese, I think, as well, and she's definitely a leader,
Yeah,
and I really like the relationship her and Pops develop as well. I think that's really nice and sweet, and no, I do agree in the sense that like it's sort of the absence of that like integral part of her character is missing, but I don't know. I do in some
yeah.
instances I can see how that would be a positive,
Yeah, like I love to see a strong female character, but you need to you need to see the character become that. Like
Mhm.
I don't like just the the appearance and the retconning of like a character's personality. Like I
Yeah,
think it just goes against what
it's a
what
good
James
point.
Cameron wanted out of the character.
That's a really good point, man. That's a really good point. Like, what are your thoughts on generally like how they treated Arnold Schwarzenegger in this film? Because he is a lot more comedic as well than we've previously seen his iteration of the T-800.
Yeah, I mean I don't mind it honestly. I
It's definitely
I'm
aimed at a
sorry,
younger audience.
I'm just sick of talking about this film. Like, I didn't actually hate this film, but just my notes make no sense because of how fucked the timeline in this is. And yeah, so I quite enjoyed the performance of Arnold Schwarzenegger. How about you?
I did quite like it because it's definitely aimed at a younger audience, I suppose, because this is a 12 again, isn't it?
Yeah, it is,
Yeah, so it is
unfortunately.
different, but I did like it as well. I did like it.
Yeah. So in sort of the final act of the film, we find out that Cyberdyne is actually developing uh, a time travel device. And it seems odd to me that in 2017, with a team of scientists and the assistance of John Connor, they can't build a time machine, but two people in 1984 can.
Yeah, it seems a bit counterintuitive. Like Sarah Connor and Pops, they just shit that out.
Yeah, I guess it's like they're saying that they needed the CPU from a Terminator to create it. But I mean,
Hello?
Skynet. So, hello,
Hello, can you
can you
hear?
hear me?
Yeah, yeah. You just
I
cut
can
out for a second
I
there.
can hear you.
Awesome, okay.
Okay, so So Cyberdyne has already developed Genisys, which will become Skynet. So surely, quite easily, they can develop the CPU that controls the Terminators. So if that's the missing puzzle piece to create the time travel device, surely they can create it as easily as people in 1984 created every other component of the device.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, man. That's a good point. I suppose the film, I mean, time travel films are definitely always going to have plot holes here and there, but this film it does have quite a few, doesn't it?
Yeah. So the final standoff of the film takes place in 2017, and I'm just wondering where the magic Terminator killing bullets went. Because I get that they can't take weapons with them from time to time, but it's not like they went from the future where they have like really advanced guns to the past where they're where they're less impressive. They've gone from the past to the future, so
Yeah,
those bullets should still exist, but they
yeah.
just they just completely forget about them.
You just hide it and like just bury it somewhere, and then yeah, just come into the future and
Yeah,
on
exactly.
bury it. Yeah. Like, I actually really like the final standoff with the T-3000. I actually, personally, I love like the nanobot style effects it uses as well. I love that.
Yeah. Did you have any thoughts on like the further, sorry, the final battle and sort of that point in the film? Because my next points are really just moving on to the very end of the film.
I was sort of a little bit let down at how they didn't follow through with Arnie's with the T800's death. I would have I would have respected the film a lot more for that. But the fact that they sort of make him like a T1000 T800 combo was a little bit cheap, I thought.
I I actually quite enjoyed that because I think, obviously they kill him off in, I think, every other film, so it was different
Yeah,
to
true,
actually see
yeah.
him survive. And it wasn't that he just stayed the same. He also evolved, which I found quite interesting,
Fair
just
enough,
for,
man.
for
Fair
me.
enough. Yeah, that's a good point actually. Yeah, I actually never considered that he actually does die in every other film, really.
Yeah, so we talked about the chemistry for John Connor, sorry, for Sarah, no, not John Connor, for Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese. uh, And whilst they might have an okay relationship, if he had survived in 1984, their relationship is going to suck in 2017 because they're completely off the grid. So that means that they can't live a normal life. She existed in the past and just disappeared, so she's probably on like a missing persons registry. Uh,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, Kyle Reese has been raised in a version of the future where he didn't have parents and he didn't have a good life. So he definitely doesn't have a personality. So, in my opinion, that relationship's gonna suck.
Yeah, it's a pity. It is a pity. Like, so I actually do like in a weird way. I like Jai Courtney because I think he actually in Suicide Squad. I think he makes a good Captain Boomerang. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think he gets a lot of shit. Like, I don't think that he physically embodies the character because I'm really not convinced that he's like survived like a post-apocalypse because he's just huge, and
Mhm.
I think he'd be like more weedy and more scarred up.
Yeah,
Uh, so I don't think he has the physical resemblance to the character that I picture, and I would always picture Michael Biehn in the role.
absolutely,
But
absolutely.
I have to say I have absolutely zero issue with his performance in the film.
Yeah, I think he's an improvement on Anton Yelchin, but Anton Yelchin is still okay. I think I don't want to say he gives the performance of the film, but I'm gonna say he gives the performance of the film.
Well, yeah, because I mean it's not difficult to do.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a good
you know,
point.
I mean, there's Jason Clark, who is not good at all. Amelia Clark, her accent's a bit iffy, but she's lovable as always. And
Yeah,
then Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of just does what he always does.
yeah.
So I mean, Jai Courtney's the only one that's actually he's the only one doing something that we haven't seen from him before. So I'd say, in my opinion, I don't know that he gives the performance of the film, but he probably gives one of the better performances of his career. I'd say this and Suicide Squad
Yeah,
are his two best performances.
it's a
I,
good
I
point.
suppose I've only seen him in the Divergent films, aside from these two films. Have you seen him in anything else?
I haven't seen. Is he in Jupiter Ascending?
No, that's Channing Tatum.
Uh, I always get those two mixed up. But no, I haven't seen him in other films then, mate.
Fair. So overall, I don't think this is a bad film, but the timeline is absolute wank. Like, it's some of the shittest. It's some of the shittest time travel and timeline
I've,
narrative that I've ever seen.
I haven't heard anyone use
It's
that term in
horrific.
ages. That is great. That is priceless.
Just, I mean, what are your thoughts? Like, does the timeline let the film down for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I almost like I was listening to a Chris Stuckman review as well when this came out, and he had mentioned like it almost worsens his opinion on the first Terminator as well. It sort of ruins that a little bit, and it doesn't necessarily do that for me. But this film it's definitely a guilty pleasure for me. But I can definitely relate to a lot of your points. Like it is timeline and plot wise a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose because this was intended as a reboot of the franchise, well,
Sure.
a soft reboot. So they're not changing events that happened in Terminator. This is just an alternate version of
Yeah.
events. I mean,
Mhm.
this might not even be like, you know, because of the cycle of John Connor sending calories back, calories having sex with Sarah Connor, becoming John Connor's dad, then John Connor being born and sending calories back, and then that cycle happening.
Yeah.
You know, technically this movie could be a version of events that happens. This could be a version of events that happens before the events seen in the original Terminator. So it doesn't necessarily ruin the original Terminator because those events might be a timeline that actually happen sequentially after
Yeah,
this timeline.
yeah.
I hate this. I hate this film
It's time travel
because
films, mate, isn't it? It's just time
it's
travel
it's
films.
it's not. This film isn't that bad, but I shouldn't have to think this much about a
Yeah,
film that I don't absolutely love.
yeah. It's what we do in the Movie Mates podcast. You know, it's what we do.
Yeah, because I feel like we painstakingly like thought out the timeline and the sequence of events in About Time, but About Time is a good enough film that I actually wanted
It's
to think
worth
about it
doing.
that
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
But this film is, it's not terrible, but I don't want to spend this much time thinking about it.
yeah. Speaking of About Time, how would you consider? How would you feel about doing a rom-com part 2 sometime soon?
Oh, absolutely. I have I mean, I'll send you, I'll email you the updated list of episodes, and I have like, you know,
Awesome.
numbers of parts to episodes, and I have suggestions for films. So I'll send that over to you, and we can discuss that. But I would love to do a rom com part 2 episode.
Awesome, me too, man. That'll be fun. That'll be real fun.
So did you have any concluding points on the film?
Nothing at all, mate. What about you?
Nothing from me. So I'd love to hear your rating of the film.
Well, I think this film, as I said, it's a real guilty pleasure. I think the it's really action packed, and it is a pity, like we said, about it being spoiled in the trailer. And regardless of timeline issues and plot points, I'm a big fan of this film. I think it works well as a first iteration of the franchise, so I'd probably give it I'd give it an 8.
Okay.
What would you give it, mate?
Well, I have to give it props for being the least bland looking of the Terminator films since Terminator 2.
Yeah,
You know, Terminator 3 is a good film, but it lacks color and it lacks impressive cinematography. And Terminator 4 is just grey and dusty, post-apocalyptic
sure.
wasteland.
Yeah,
So this is the most engaging looking film since Terminator 2, and I have to give it full credit for that. The performances are not as bad as I expected. They're nowhere near as bad as Terminator 4. And I would say that Jai Courtney is probably one of the biggest standouts of the film. And it's given probably one of the less bad interpretations of John Connor. So I have to give it a favorable review in comparison to other interpretations of John Connor.
sure.
Uh, so I think it's pretty consistent in acting. There's no truly terrible acting in the film. But the timeline is some of the worst I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah,
So I would say I like almost every other element if you just cleaned up the timeline more. And I think that it really had sequel opportunities because we've never seen a version of Kyle Reese that survives. And I thought that would be really interesting to see. And to
absolutely.
maybe even see him like play an actual like father figure role to John Connor if John Connor's even born in this potential version of events.
Sure.
So for all the elements that I enjoyed, I think I'm gonna have to give the film a 6, or I'll give it a 6.5.
That's great. I thought your points were so insightful. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said, and that was a great final send off for it. I've actually really enjoyed covering the Terminator films, man, with you. It's probably been one of our more in depth arcs in the channel.
Yeah, I mean, like, how long have we been talking about this? Like, we've been on for like nearly 2 hours talking about only 2 films. Like, that is shocking. I think this might need a bit of a trim in the edit, just because like there were points where I just sat for like a full minute groaning, which I think can probably be edited back a little bit.
No worries, man. Listen, do you want me to hop right into the conclusion?
Sure, go right ahead.
No worries. Well, listen, thanks for your points, mate. I thought they were really great. And thanks to everyone who has listened. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on the Terminator films down below. And hope you guys are all safe and well. Hope your families are all safe and well. And it's been great recording with you, Callum. So take care, guys. And bye-bye.
Bye bye.